Hi guys, welcome to 154th episode of Score Couch. Just kidding, it's our first episode of Score Couch. But the goal of Score Couch is to discuss software, is to discuss branding, is to discuss strategy, is to discuss a lot of topics that regard to digital, because we are a software development agency. We are digital agency, and we're proud of that, and we just wanted to share our perspective with all of you. Today I'm here with Paweł. Paweł is one of the co-founders of Score Digital.
Hello.
And I'm another co-founder of Score Digital, and today we're going to cover mobile.
My favorite topic, right?
Yeah. Mobile is your favorite topic because?
Because I've started in IT as a mobile developer.
Okay.
I supposed to be Android dev, but in my first job, my first boss told me to do an app in iOS.
Okay, so that's the story.
That's the story.
Okay, so and you converted for a bit, or you just stayed with the technology?
So after doing the first app, I did this quite well. So I've continued working on this application, and I stayed for 8 years.
Okay, that's actually funny because I didn't know that. I knew that you were a iOS developer, but I didn't know that it was an accident.
It was, yeah. So during my studies, you have to, at least for 3 months work in a certain company and have a paper as a proof. So I was working as Android dev, and after that I wanted to start my journey in IT as Android dev. I've made the first application which puts your face into the Hulk body. So it was in a store, and it was my first and only app released in Android.
It sounds a bit augmented reality-ish.
Yes, it was, but we were just cropping the face.
Okay, so not augmented
different
reality.
times,
Okay. That's interesting. And you've started as a dev, and from what I know, you're still coding, right? From time to time.
Yeah, this is true. However, in before doing Score with you, when I was leading the tech team for almost 3 years, I stopped coding because that was during my transition from the tech guy to a manager. So it was quite a hard time in my life. So I didn't have time to code.
Okay.
Yeah, but right now I get back to it. I've started with Swift, and right now I'm learning Flutter from Google.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have to say I'm pretty excited.
Okay, so that has to be very interesting to be head of technology, because you are supposed to lead the team, you are supposed to lead the company, you are supposed to code, and you are supposed to research, do R&D stuff, So you're keeping busy. That's great. If you were to say, how mobile changed throughout the world. So you've started like how many? 8 years ago? 9 years ago?
10.
10 years ago. Okay.
I was 20.
So how is, because back in the day, was it even a native development? Yeah? If you were to
Of
say,
course.
what was the native development then? And because I remember that, if I remember correctly, that iPhone was supposed to be a non-native technology back in the day. Steve Jobs, I think, introduced this as a device that will not require to have a native technology, but that only lasted for a couple of months, if I remember correctly.
To be honest, I even don't remember this part. So when I was starting, there was Xcode 5, I believe, and we were coding in Objective-C, a language which, if you show it today to someone who is starting a journey, he will say, how can you code in this? Like, this language doesn't, it's not similar to anything which is on the market right now. And for me, it was tough because I've started, I had Java during my studies, and I was learning Java Enterprise, Spring, and I wanted to be a Java developer.
Okay.
But later, during my bachelor, I did an app in Android. So it was a Java, not Enterprise Edition, but Java Standard Edition. And we did this first application. And converting from Java to Objective-C was really tough. Like everything was different.
Okay. And so if you were to compare, so starting now, like if I were to become mobile developer, it would be easier for me now than 10 years ago, or it's just different?
Mm-hmm. And this is it's a good question, and I don't have straight answer because there are several variables in this equation. If you ask me in terms of the technology, I think it's much easier right now, because 10 years ago when I was doing iOS, I have to think about many things when I was coding. For example, memory management. There is a technology in iOS, it calls automatic reference counting. So it keeps it takes the responsibility from the developer to think about certain stuff, not everything, but certain stuff. Right now, when you are dealing with Flutter, for example, a person who is starting, he doesn't even think about it because the framework gives you this. Of course, you can do a lot of mistakes with memory management, but the framework itself keeps developer preventing from certain stuff. Not everything, but there is a big amount of things taken from your shoulders. Also, there's a lot more documentation. The community is much bigger. There are third-party libraries which are like working solutions for. To be honest, when you have a product house like ours, it covers a lot of stuff from your daily basis job. So when you have to authenticate with something, do some image recognition and so on, everything's there. You just have to use it smart. From time to time, we have custom solution which is not available anywhere. But during those 10 years, even Google in Flutter, you can see that for many years we were implementing hamburger menu in the app. So the left side menu which you tap and it slides, and you had to do this manually, or you have to use third-party libraries. In Flutter, it's a couple of lines of code. So from the technology point of view, I think it's easier, but the developers, I think the society changed a bit.
Okay.
I would not say that they are okay. So they are not forced to understand so much than they were forced 10 years ago, because of you have to think about memory management and threading. You have to understand more stuff under the hood, and right now it's easier to start. It's easier to deliver an app which is working, but you don't really know what's going on under behind the curtains, because frameworks does it for you. So I think it's harder to find a person who really knows what he is doing nowadays, also because the number of developers increased, and also because it's easier for anyone to start. This is my opinion, and this is my observation also talking with people right now during the recruitment and cooperation.
Okay, so it's just different. But yeah, from what you are saying, a lot of I think it's similar to education in general, right? Because you don't have to have the basics right now. Right now, you don't have to know how to, I don't know, stupid example, but I remember back in the day when you were going to library, you needed to know how to fill in the paper in order for a librarian to give you the proper book. Yeah. Right now, I don't even know if they teach us at schools anymore.
I don't think so.
So that's similar. Okay, so Flutter. What is even Flutter? Like, what's the difference with Swift? You've mentioned Objective-C, you've mentioned Swift, you've mentioned Java. Now
Flutter. You have Kotlin also, right?
So what are the I know landscape is huge, but from a mobile perspective,
right?
What's landscape right now?
Mm-hmm.
What's the landscape?
Okay, so Flutter is a framework from Google, right? And it allows you to write a code once and compile it to iOS and compile it to Android. And since a couple of months, you can also do a web platform from the same code base. It's a huge step in terms of business, because you can have one developer who and for the simple project he can execute it in Flutter, and it will cover all of the functionalities, right? Of course, when you are dealing with some low-level APIs, there are certain stuff you have to do native still, right? But when you need an application where you have to log in, register, forget password, you have a dashboard with an objects. You are adding the objects there, you are adding this to cart, you are buying it. Everything you can do in Flutter once and run it in basically free environments. Previously, you have to know Swift, you have to know Kotlin, write both apps, the whole navigation stack in both platforms separately, implement all of the screens in both platforms, and you have to make a communication and all of the business code separately. So twice work, right? Flutter is not 2 times faster because there is certain stuff you have to do separately, like for example releasing the app. You need a Google account, you need Apple account, you have to generate the packages separately, and the process is slightly different for both, right? And when you have some custom code with, I don't know, like a low energy Bluetooth, for example, you have to do it separately, or augmented reality, because of those libraries still are not supported well by Flutter. You have to use separate solutions. But other than that, you can have an app pretty fast using Dart. Dart is a programming language from Google.
Mm-hmm. So native versus Flutter, for example, Flutter, right? What are the scenarios, or what are the variables that you should take into account when considering, going into the particular path?
This is really good question, and a couple of months ago I also had this dilemma because of my other project which I'm executing after hours. I was thinking it's a mobile app, and I was choosing the technology there. Okay. So you are considering a couple of different things: the price of delivery, the scalability, stability, right? And what can you do in the certain platform? So you are taking into account the community in, for example, React Native versus Flutter versus native technologies, right? And what can you do? Where is the limit, right? How far you can push this framework before you say, okay, it was a wrong choice.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah. So I have chosen Flutter because my app doesn't involve any fireworks from the tech point of view. It's just simple sending data here and there, and the majority of the stuff is on the backend. And Flutter is a good solution because first I can do this by myself, right? When I'm writing a code, I'm just running this on 2 simulators, iOS and Android, and I see how does it look like after a single change. When I'm fixing a bug, I'm fixing this once. I don't have to, because it's boring when you have to implement the same thing. You did this on iOS and you have to do this on Android, right? It's just boring. And
you're doing this twice.
Yes, and you feel that you are really wasting time.
Okay.
Yeah, you've implemented this once and you have the business value, but you need to cover other systems, and you have to do this again. So this is a pain, right? But we had previously in the market solutions where you could do this, like Xamarin, for example. There was Xamarin Native and Xamarin Forms, but Xamarin Forms was really slow. So you could say that it's not a native application, that something's wrong with the animations and so on. You had Cordova and some JavaScript-based things, which were really under the hood a web view with, it was an HTML page, but with some extras, right? Okay. So it was not a native experience. With Flutter, it's compiled to the native code. So like taking out the tech aside, talking strictly business, you are receiving a product on a quality of a native application, but it's a Flutter, right? Of course, I was checking some benchmarks, and it looks like in terms of some sophisticated animations, native is still faster. So okay. When you have to process a lot of different I don't know. Let's say that you want to draw charts. Yeah, you have a lot of, I don't know, market data and you have to show it. Probably I will consider native technologies if the app is mainly this,
Okay.
because the gain, the profit which you have from using Flutter is not so big, because the majority of the work, 80% of the work, will be doing separately logic here and there. I don't know if the Flutter will be fast enough. Maybe this is still to check, right? This is quite a new thing. But with iOS, I will be 100% sure that it will be smooth. With Flutter,
Okay.
not
So there are certain business scenarios and certain, let's say, obstacles that you may come across if you are building more sophisticated elements or features within your application.
And also for like in Score, we have a project in augmented reality, and well, if the majority of the work will be creating a 3D object and placing them somewhere, so does it make sense to go with Flutter, where it's a bit harder to maintain these AR libraries than the native solutions? It depends from the problem you are going to solve. However, from the experience, because my previous job was also like a product house, software house, a lot of applications, they need like a really similar stuff, and this stuff is already covered in Flutter.
Okay, so if you're going MVP with your product that you just conceptualized, probably Flutter or a similar, let's say, hybrid technology is the way to go.
It's a cross-platform technology, like to be really precise.
Okay.
But I will choose from React Native and Flutter.
Okay.
Yes, for simple from the simple application from the technology point of view. So you have a screen, you are asking backend for a data, you receive the data, you are displaying this, you have some forms. I think Flutter is perfect. Like it doesn't make sense to have native applications when you can go with Flutter.
Another dilemma which I'm curious about, because I know that, as you know, I'm an Android user.
Yes, I know.
At least from a point of view of my mobile, I've already converted with my computer, but that's a separate discussion. How about the particular elements of user interface? So there are differences, right, between an app that you can have on native iOS and on native Android. How does this technology, cross-platform technology, bridge the gap between having button here, pushing this button to go back, using this menu and so on and so forth? Because there are differences, right?
They are, yes. iOS users got used to different navigation and different behavior of the controls, as you said, than Android users, right? However, Flutter pretty well covers those gaps, looking for like a middle point. But my impression is that it's in a favor of Android a bit.
Okay.
Like even when you are starting creating a first Flutter app, and you want basic set of items like a navigation bar, and you want to some theme of the application, you are creating an object called material app. Material for material design from Google, which is used on Android. And the standard configuration for the project, all of those controls are more similar to the ones Android has. Even tapping on a button, from the place where your finger is placed, there is a nice animation of like you are doing this on a water, like those circles, like a bigger ones. This animation is purely Android one, it's not iOS behavior. However, you can style the application to look like really iOS, and you can do it still. But the default behavior, I would say, and all of the tutorials which you will find when you want to start, the app will look more like Android app a bit, but it will work on iOS. So you will have a navigation bar with a back button, and when you run it on Android, your back arrow, because some phones still have arrows and something, it will still work with this. So they covered all of those differences there.
Okay, so it's for the end user, it's pretty seamless experience. So you won't know. Probably if you're a very experienced and platform orientated user, you will notice, but it's not something that a vanilla user like myself would notice.
I think the developer will know, but if you will do, I think I will be able to code application in a way that even my friends doing iOS will have having troubles answering, is it a native or is it Flutter?
Okay, so that's that's a very good standard, I would say. Because if you are able to fool a developer, quote unquote fool,
yeah,
in the brackets, so that's good. Okay, so that's the difference between from a business or application design perspective. How about covering business requirements? Is there a significant difference between how do you approach that on mobile and how do you approach that on doing Flutter development? I'm saying that, let's say that we have a workshop, right? And let's say that the customer is considering either going native or doing Flutter. Is there a difference with approaching the starting point? How do you position yourself in building the user stories and doing everything for native and for cross-platform?
Right. From the business perspective, it doesn't matter, right? So functionality is the functionality. So we are first starting with a customer, trying to answer the question, what kind of problem the customer see and he want to solve, and later he's explaining us how he's gonna do it, right? So this part doesn't change. Technology is not here yet, yeah, and we are creating the business requirements. So it's the same. When we have those business requirements and we are starting to put as tech solutions on top of that, right? In this moment, where the estimation changes, because we have to take into account that we have to test the app on certain iOS versions, and we have to test it on Android, where the fragmentation of the system is much higher. So we have to speak with the customer what kind of devices, tablets or not tablets, right? What kind of minimum system on which he wants to run the application. Previously, we were also doing this, but sometimes customer was choosing one of them, so iOS or Android. If someone is going Flutter, he basically wants two platforms. Okay. We didn't have a situation where because it's also possible, you can do a Flutter app also for Android. You can do it, right? But it's not happening because they want to cover all of the market. So the estimation is different because we are adding time to put both applications into store, to test both applications, because testing, you still have to test them separately, right? Okay. I believe this is the proper approach. You can't assume that if something's working here, it will work here, because Samsung can have different drivers, and we had this story where the UI drivers were interfering the Bluetooth driver, okay, and the application was working differently.
Okay. So although it's a cross-platform, there are some, let's say, details that you need to take into account.
Google is an awesome company, but also even they are making some mistakes. And also in Flutter SDK, there was some things which were not perfect.
Plus, it's pretty new technology, right?
I mean, it is.
So probably it evolves over time and improves. And so
it is on the market from some time, right? But from I believe a couple of weeks, there is quite a stable version of Flutter Web, where you can actually run the app which you wrote in a browser, which I did in my project, and it worked, and I was really surprised.
Okay, so here I have another question. Maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't, but let's say that we have a cross-platform application that uses functionality that is typical for mobile experience. Let's say it, I don't know, redirects you to your calendar, or uses your camera, or something like that. What happens on web? Let's say that you release the application, and at some point in time you click the button, and it's supposed to go to your camera on a phone. So I assume that when I run it on web, it just crashes. Or what?
It will not be really cool if it it will be like you described, right? This is the same rule as you had also in mobile, because let's say that you are implementing login with Face ID on your iPhone, or let's say Android device, right? And you are running the application where you don't have a scanning face interface, and you don't have a fingerprint reader, so the app will crash. No, it just doesn't have it. So if it doesn't have it, it asks you for a password or a PIN. So there are checks. If you don't have it, you have to handle this differently. So it's the same. It's the same here.
Okay.
Yeah. So you are asking for certain device capabilities, like camera, like a GPS, like Bluetooth module. If it doesn't have it, you have to handle it properly. And this is how it's handled also in the SDK. So if you are using certain parts of Flutter, developer has any information that it's purely for mobile.
So in that case, I would just get a pop-up in my browser. Would you give me access to your camera?
Yeah.
Probably. If someone would actually wrote it that way.
Yes.
Okay. So that's
it
good.
will not. It shouldn't crash.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so I think that we've covered some topics today.
I believe so.
Yeah, maybe we will revisit the Flutter topic. If you guys would like to know more about Flutter or any other mobile or web technology or any other topic that would be cool to cover, let us know in the comment section. If you want to support and see more episodes, hit subscribe, and we'll see you soon on Score Couch. Thanks, Paweł, for taking the time.
Thank you, Olaf. It was a pleasure.
Great. See you guys.